Welcome back. I love the music Happy. I hope you're happy. So when I design the program, I always design the program around themes. So we're continuing to talk about the digital pivot. So our first presentation was small redesign of manufacturing, biomolecular engineering, really putting yeast to work, small factories. Then we had the discussion about robotics and, collaborative robotics and what we could do with robotics. Now I'm going to switch to the Internet of Things. And my next two speakers both turned me down for multiple years, but those of you who know me know I'm pretty tenacious, and I just kept asking. And I just love this next speaker, and I just got to tell you a little bit about Chris Clowes. And Chris currently works for the Walgreens Boots Alliance, which he'll tell you about. But when I first met Chris, he was working for Costa Coffee. And what I love about Chris is his energy and his willingness to think differently. And, there aren't enough Chris's, I think, in this world that, see a supply chain possibility and just go after it. So Chris has traveled here from England, and you'll notice from his accent. And he recently joined the Walgreens Boots Alliance in September 2016. But, he really loves supply chain. He graduated with a BA in honors in French and German supply chain practice in the International Division of Kiel University. And one of the things that I love about inviting global supply chain leaders is just the diversity of thought. So I think you will not have a problem thinking differently after Chris Clowes leaves the stage. Chris, welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Laura, for the invite and being so candid in when I've been here and why I'm 4 years later than originally planned. I'm going to ask these guys on the left to hold me accountable because I have a really bad habit of walking around. So if I go past here, can someone just put their hand up because apparently the video can't keep up. And also, I just need to say hello to someone. My girlfriend of 10 years, she wants to be my wife, but I'm not ready for that, is watching back at home. So hello, Emma. It's 11 p.m. back in the UK. I wasn't quite expecting that. Just before I kick off, I'd really like to do a little exercise to keep everybody warmed up, ready for your walk tomorrow. And just to really provoke some thought as we go through the presentation today. So can I ask everyone to stand up, please? So if you sit down, I know you're lying because most of you are American. So stay stood up if you like coffee. And when I say oh no! And by coffee, I mean espresso-based, what Starbucks does, fresh milk, cappuccinos, lattes, specialty coffee. Now, what Costa Express does is uses machines to make barista-quality coffee. So I'd like you to stay stood up if you think a machine can make coffee as well as a barista. Oh, this is really good. Oh, come on. So with that in mind, that machines can do things as well as people, think back to your supply chain and your demand planning, your replenishment, your forecast planning. Do you think machines can demand plan and replenishment plan and do your supply chain planning as well as people? Everyone still stood up. This could be a quick presentation, Laura. So my last question is, think back to your organization and how autonomous is your supply chain? So do you let machines run your supply chain with minimal or zero intervention from people? Excellent. That almost failed. That almost fell apart on me. I'm glad that everyone sat down. So hopefully today I can share with you an example of where we let machines run our supply chain through a period of phenomenal growth. We started off back in 2012 when I joined Costa Express. I'll tell you a little bit about Costa and what we did. And then this takes us right the way through a supply chain transformation program And then finishes, when I left Costa, some of the stuff we were looking at in terms of the more exciting things like predictive analytics and what we can do as a service organization as well. Laura's given a great insight into me. Just to add the personal touch, I'm a massive Wasps fan. That's rugby for any Wasps fans? Any rugby fans? Rugby's a massive sport that's growing in the US. Big Sevens team in Canada as well. Rugby is like American football, but without the pads. It's for proper men. So this is a brief overview of Costa. It was founded in '71 by two Italian brothers. They moved over to London and set up a roastery in Victoria. And so we have Italian heritage, and I will say we, because if I'll just get lost otherwise. So we have Italian heritage. Any Italians here? American Italians? You guys know coffee, right? So I think some really good heritage there in our business, reflecting on some of the stuff we spoke about this morning. Back in 2009, Coffee Nation was a company that was founded in about 1990, and was really pushing the boundaries by an entrepreneur, a chap called Scott, who said that machines can do things as well as people. And in fact, for basic drinks, cappuccinos, lattes, they can do it better than people, because machines don't have bad days. Machines don't have issues in the morning dropping the kids off. Machines are pretty consistent and don't have emotions. Maybe soya will, but certainly currently machines don't. So in 2009, Costa bought Coffee Nation and saw that as a real growth opportunity for them. Competing with Starbucks, actually. Scott repeats fondly the story of how he played the two off against one another to get the best price. He's now got a really nice car that demonstrates he got the best price. And what was really unique about Coffee Nation is that they saw themselves as a technology company rather than a coffee company. They used telemetry, which we now call machine-to-machine communication or the Internet of Things. Basically, it's just a modem that sends information back to a central point to say that the machine is empty, or the machine needs milk, or the machine needs a clean. So way back in the early 90s, some real revolutionary thinking that, as we're now just beginning to adopt more frequently now, that we applied to coffee. And then adding the Costa brand to Coffee Nation just saw an explosion in the business. We had some proprietary technology, some great technology. We added a great coffee brand to it, and the thing just took off. So I joined in 2012. This was about a year after the acquisition. And frankly, the business was in a little bit of a mess. They'd been private equity backed before. Money had all gone into new machines rather than IT systems. And there'd been a management team there that were high on goodwill, high on energy, but maybe lacking a little bit of expertise. So when I joined, they had 2,500 machines. They'd increased that by 1,000 in just 18 months. So a near 100% increase. They'd had a relationship with their logistics provider for the whole 12 years that Coffee Nation had been going for. Legacy IT systems, and an operations structure that worked for 1,000 machines, but didn't work nowhere near for 2,500 machines. Now, I've heard a lot about evolution today, so this might scare some of you. We made some big changes really, really quickly. And revolution can actually, it's scary sometimes, but the results that you can get are so much more powerful, so much more impactful, so much more decisive than what sometimes incremental change can be. I take on board that Costa is a relatively small organization compared to the P&Gs, the Unilevers, the General Mills here. So revolution might be a little bit harder in those organizations, but I think there's real value in doing things quickly sometimes and just getting on with it. So April 2012, I joined and took this mismatch and hodgepodge of just stuff and supply chain that was mixed around and the organization didn't know where to put it. So I took ownership for our supply chain function from a mixture of field-based staff and our finance team. And I had to apply a plaster to our current situation. We had one spreadsheet for every single machine that was doing the replenishment of our sites, linked to another spreadsheet. Now, I'm no spreadsheet expert, but it wasn't even linked with macros. It was just formulas that pulled all this together. So it was very close to falling over. Now, if I take a step back a little bit about the way Costa Express works, is we push stock out to sites. So you don't have to order from us. We will send it to you based on what the machine has told us you've sold. Now, that might just sound like a really simple use of EPOS data, but when you consider that we sell a cappuccino, but we are kind of like a manufacturing retailer, and that we have to work out how many cups went into that, how much sugar went into that, coffee, stirrers, napkins, chocolate sprinkles, sweetener. So we have to use a bill of materials to turn that information that comes into us into what we then send out to the sites. July 2012, I'm only 3 months in. We tendered our logistics and we tendered an IT solution. And we went to market. So what was really interesting, I think, here today, it's great to see some IT vendors that clearly understand what we're talking about as business leaders and to a large extent leading the thought process. But when I went to the market, a lot of people just didn't understand what we needed actually. So even some of the IT vendors and some of the really big ones, they'd be top 3 in terms of size, just didn't get what we wanted. So we had to go to smaller boutique vendors. And I say that with the greatest respect and the greatest admiration rather than that being a bad thing. November 2012, we chose Tools Group's SO99 as a demand planning and replenishment planning solution. And we also decided that that'd be a little bit too easy, a new IT system, so we decided to change our logistics provider as well. Now, this wasn't just changing the way we move stock around the UK, this was about changing the whole way that we dealt with suppliers. So our incumbent logistics provider bought all the stock on our behalf, managed the cash flow, the stock holding. So we had to take on that all as well, because we just wanted someone to do logistics. We didn't want anyone to manage the P2P process and manage the cash flow for us. We could cope with that ourselves now. We had a big FTSE 100 company behind us. So November 2012, we decided who we were going to go with. And then I remember the conversation with Jamie at Howard Tennans, our logistics provider, Martin at Tools Group. When do you want to go live? January seems like a good idea. They were, well, that's 2014? No, 2013. So 2 months later, we implemented the solution. Relative for the UK, we had some of the worst snow that we'd ever had, which was about 6 inches, and virtually brought our road networks to a halt. So we had some difficulties going live as well, but within about a week, we'd settled all of that down from both an IT and a physical logistics operation. Just bear in mind, that's about 8 months from me starting to saying that we've got to do something here because our business was growing on a trajectory that our current systems just couldn't cope with. So 2013, the year of change. And as I say, we introduced new planning and optimization processes with Tools Group's SO99. And then the other thing we did is we redefined the role of our field teams. So talking about supply chain as an enabler for business growth, we took away some functions that they were doing that they really shouldn't be doing. They were messing around with spreadsheets. They were moving stock around the UK from one site to another. We said, let us take control of that. You focus on doing what you should be doing, which is engaging with our partners, selling more coffee, making sure our brand standards and our quality are being met. And we did this all in the face of rapid growth. We doubled the size of our business. And just to give you an idea of where this finishes, from when I joined to our targets this year, there was a 14-fold increase in profit that this business is expected to deliver. So what did we implement from a supply chain point of view? So as I said, our machines can talk to us. They can talk to us every 15 minutes, and they have about 90 different alarms that they can send to us. Where I need a clean, I need some coffee putting in or some milk. I'll talk about that and how we're looking to use that data a little bit towards the end of the presentation. But what we wanted to harness to start with was the fact that every machine, every night, told us exactly what it had sold, whether that was 5 cappuccinos or 7, whether they were large, regular. So what we implemented from a system point of view was a demand planning system brought stock into our warehouse from our suppliers, and a replenishment planning system that then pushed stock out to our site. And it did this in quite a clever way in terms of sensing our demand. It categorized our sites. So at a macro level, we have no seasonality in our business. But at a micro level, in terms of groups, so our schools and universities surprisingly went quiet in June when no one was there, but our machines that were on motorways and in holiday parks got busier. And then Tools Group's software could take on that seasonality, almost learn which pot I needed to put it in to then factor in what it needed to do in the future. And then it also broke down using a bill of materials, what was sold, and then said how much coffee, how many cups, how many lids do I need to send out to our site. In terms of the network, and I'll talk about the network as it was when I left, there were 5,500 machines operating in 7 countries, varying from the UK at scale through to some trial markets. We have about 100 core SKUs that we have to send out to our sites, not very much. We have 600 different drink combinations, and we sell going on 2 million cups of coffee a week. So in terms of scale and the calculation process that the software had to go through every single night, it wasn't complexity in terms of just sheer number of SKUs, but genuine complexity in our supply chain in terms of how we decided what to send to sites. So it gave us foresight. This is an example of aggregated volume, I think, by month. And then the green bar is what was actually sold, and then the wavy line gives us the predicted sales. Now, what the system also did really well was to cope with the idea that we were growing. This wasn't a business where we implemented it and we just had a flat line. Every single month, apart from every single month, our sales grew, like significantly. So it was also able to cope with that at an aggregated level. It then also gave us accuracy. See, the red line, it was there to smooth out the volume and the variability on a day-to-day basis. So we've talked about complexity and embracing complexity and volatility today. Well, we just let our system get on with it and embrace the complexity and the volatility and deal with it for us. And then we automated stuff. So this was the coffee orders that we needed to place on our roastery for 120 days. So, and then we could build in that we ordered in full truckloads or that we needed to order once a week. So it could cope with that growth as well. Now, the really scary thing is that we did all of this demand planning and replenishment planning and the growth with one person. And that one person still runs the entire operation. This was about a really touch-light operation where we just let the system do what it's meant to do. So 2013, a year of change in our business and in our supply chain. Well, what did that do for us? And I think it's really important, again, we talk about supply chain as an enabler within our business, to look at some of the stuff that isn't just key supply chain metrics. So our Net Promoter Score increased by 10%. That was because we took a supply chain function away from our field teams and said, go and do what you're supposed to do, engage our customers, sell more coffee, make the machines cleaner. We were able to reduce the stock holding at sites. We've got some guys here from Shell. They were our biggest still our biggest global partner. There isn't much space in a Shell petrol station to store stock, as any retail operation actually. It's all given over to floor space for the retail side. So we were able to significantly reduce our stock holding at site. We've talked about sustainability today. Just this 1 year, we were able to save 70 tons of CO2. That might not sound that much if you're Walmart or if you're P&G, but for us, we were running a relatively small logistics operation. That made a big impact. And also, we were able to reduce the cost of our logistics operation. By the end of 2013, we're at 4,300 machines. 2011, we were at 900 machines. So this is a business that has gone through stratospheric increase in its operation and in its scale in the UK. I bet Givaudan didn't think they were going to be mentioned twice today, just reflecting back on the yeast presentation. But it was a little bit too easy for us to just change our supply chain, increase our net promoter score, and engage and delight our customers more than we were before. So we thought, and Cummins mentioned it actually, how do we stay ahead of our competitor? And again, Scott, a very gregarious character, has his one big thing all the time is think like number two, because you are going to get taken over if you don't. So whilst we were doing all of this, we went and designed a brand new machine, and this was designed to really touch on the 5 senses: touch, sight, smell, and the rest, and really delight our customers. So this was taking Pininfarina, who designed Ferraris, and we asked them to design us a coffee machine, or a case for a coffee machine. We worked with Thermoplan, Swiss engineered, one of the biggest bean-to-cup coffee machine makers in the world. Atom Hawk and Emix Pro, who did some of the special effects in Harry Potter. Emix Pro worked with U2. And Intel Inside. I don't know if I meant to say copyrighted after that. But we had a cutting-edge Intel processor inside that I'm pretty sure could have run a plane rather than just a coffee machine. And then again, we've changed our supply chain. We've developed a new machine. Again, but that's all far too easy. So we went into international expansion at the same time as well. We worked with our franchise partner in Ireland. We now have over 200 machines in Ireland. Our equity-owned business in Poland, we now have just under 300 machines in Poland. And then in the Gulf, we've worked with them. We've had some issues in terms of just working in the environment that the Gulf, the political environment, I should say. So that business hasn't grown quite as quickly as we want, but we have line of sight to getting 100 machines out there with a state-owned petrol company now as well. So our supply chain sorted. We've got the machines, and we're set up for success for the future, and we've entered new markets. So 2013, pretty good year. We're only 1 year in here. So where do we go to next? So 2014 was all about then, how do we really set this business up for growth? We'd had some good years. Whitbread had invested around £65 million buying Coffee Nation. It wanted its return on invested capital, or investment, that we talk about so much. So we had to think, how do we really set this business up for growth now? So we looked at 3 core things. We realigned our internal structure, again, bearing in mind we'd only done this back in 2012 with those brand guardian roles, the people that were getting stock out to sites before the supply chain took over. And we looked at that and said, is that adding much value actually? How can we make that better? So we focused the roles down into audit and training, and reorganized our field structure. So we didn't lose any people, and we didn't actually reduce our cost base that much. But what we were looking to do was really set this business up and accelerate it for growth. We then looked at our back office systems. Because we'd grown so quickly, we had some core systems that we needed to replace. Our ERP, we needed to move over, and the way that we invoiced our customers, and the way that we dealt with all this data that our machines were sending back to us. And then we needed to define our strategic growth plan. So rather than throwing a dart at a dartboard and a map and deciding where we go, we needed to look at it a little bit more strategically and decide where we were going to go. And again, this was all with a view to doubling the size of our business again. When Costa bought Coffee Nation, there were 900 machines in 2011. By 2020, their aim was to get to 8,000, and they're pretty confident they're going to do that. And we're going to do that with our world-class support systems, so real-time demand planning in our supply chain, proven operation and back office systems that we're going to reinvigorate and change. We have a world-class helpline and support who want to keep our machines up and running. And uniquely, one of our big selling points with all of our customers is we can go, our machine is going to be up and trading for longer. And any buyer will always go to us, our machines are always up and running. And we go, well, how do you know? Well, the store manager tells us. I don't know about you, but I've never met a store manager that rings up their boss and goes, oh, by the way, my machine's been off for 4 hours today. I don't think that call happens. So with our telemetry, we're able to definitively say if that machine was on or not. We have proprietary equipment in terms of our Marlowe machine, not that picture, the one I spoke about earlier was Givaudan and Emix Pro. We filed just over 100 patents for that machine. And then, most importantly, I appreciate we're not in well, Costa Express is in North America, we're not in the US, but we have a pretty good blend of coffee that is recognized certainly from the UK and across into Asia. So, what does the future look like? I think that was an overview of the changes that we went through, some really big changes, some quick changes that really set our business up for success and put the foundations in place. But now let's talk about some of the really exciting stuff. So we launched a project called Project Grid, which was about connecting all of our machines and really making use of that data and delivering some real insight rather than we have lots of data at the moment, but we didn't get much insight from that. So we launched Grid to focus on two different things. I've moved on. Thank you. So we wanted it to automatically commission. So when we install our machine, our partner will have price-specific stuff that they've decided whether they subsidize it or not, the currency, the time zone, as we go to a global business. We can then get live operational data by machine as well. So we are in the process of building an operations room that we would have a view and line of sight to how every machine around the world is performing and operating. Really exciting and way out in the future about improved machine monitoring. So is there a way with the right data and the right analytics that we could predict a module is going to fail? Now that's really exciting stuff, and I think after me, we're going to talk about how we can go and visit and improve customer service by proactively visiting air conditioning units, and I think we've absolutely looked at that at Costa as well. Dynamic machine location information, so we could move the machine and the machine would know it's been moved to somewhere else, and then the prices would automatically update and change as well. Automated operator alerts, which was phase one, and I'll come on to that just in a bit, and that is working, and as our store managers hate it. Our business kind of sponsors within large organizations love it. And then we improved the way that our machines talk to us. So the infrastructure we were using was based on not even 2G, it was based on GPRS. So we've now put in modems that can work on 4G. I appreciate in Asia we're looking at 5G already, and whether that's LAN and WAN connected as well. So here's an overview of just one of the things that we're looking at. And our aim here was always, we looked at Apple as our benchmark. You turn an iPhone on, it knows where it is, what it needs to do, and you go through 5 steps and your iPhone is pretty much working. It used to take us around about half an hour, 45 minutes, to connect a machine to our infrastructure, and that was just in the UK. We can now connect a machine to our infrastructure anywhere in the world in about 30 seconds, which is a pretty vast improvement on the half an hour that we had before. And then secondly, I talked about machine operator alerts. I have to apologize, this video finishes on the cigarettes. Now, I think, sorry, Laura, but I've done this presentation before. I'll come back and circle a compliment. And that has always seemed way out there and nowhere near to what anyone is thinking about or anyone has the capability to do. Whereas I think what's really exciting is that a year on, that people are talking that this is going to happen, and actually a machine talking to us isn't that weird. I can't remember the phrase that you used about partnering humans and computers. This is pretty much that. It's like a robot. And what this does now is the machine alerts to start with. Half an hour later, if they haven't fixed the problem, a pager is alerted, so they have to go, it keeps buzzing until they do something about it. Even if they turn off the buzzer, if they haven't solved the problem, it will alarm again. If they turn off the buzzer and still don't fix the problem, the area manager gets alerted. And again, I know that when I used to work in a store, I would do everything possible to stop the area manager getting told anything. If they don't fix it, it will then go to our local service partner. So to give you an idea, in Canada, where we've just finished rolling out our first 150 machines with the Canadian team across 3 provinces. See, we never do things easily. We were on the West Coast and the East Coast at the same time, and in Alberta when those forest fires hit, so really bad timing. But with the time zone difference, we're able to still follow this process and go through these alerts without having people working 24/7 in the UK. So this is all about how do we do things better and quicker and use data to actually deliver real insight. If they don't fix it, it was my job at Costa to manage them. Well, first of all, they then got sacked. But it would then come through to level 4 escalation in our UK office, and we would ring them and say, look, can you fix this? Nothing ever got to level 4. Our service partners were great, and very little got to level 3. So just to recap, 2012, 2,500 machines. We had 1 model. We had 1 country. We had a spreadsheet-based replenishment planning. I can't even call it that. We had spreadsheets that sent stock out. We had an incumbent logistics provider, and I say provider in the loosest sense. They kind of, yeah. And then we had an old ops structure that wasn't really fit for growth. By 2013, we'd introduced a second model. We were trialing in 3 different countries outside of the UK. And we'd implemented SO99 for our demand and replenishment planning, and we changed our logistics provider as well. And it would have got too green if I'd have kept, but just keep your eye on the left-hand column in terms of how much the business is growing as well at the same time. 2014, we've now developed Grid, and we're now looking at how we can start rolling that out. And we've now got 7 trial countries that we're working in around the world trying to grow our business. We get to 2015, and we've got a new ops structure where we changed the way that we work, and we've also brought in an international team to support the growth of our business. And we're now at 4,692 machines. And then we get to 2016, 5,600 machines, and I've skipped out a whole development phase where we developed 2 new models of machine. As we were growing in the UK, we recognized that we needed to be able to go lower into our customer base. So to get the right level of return, we needed to sell about 40 cups of coffee a day. We were saturating the market, so we needed to go lower to about 25 cups. So we developed a new machine. We called it a Mark III because it was the 3rd variant. We're really imaginative when it comes to our machines and our technology. We're just not very good at naming stuff. So the Mark III allowed us to go lower, and then our 4th model was the Mark, thank you very much, that we introduced. And that was able to move us into a real different phase of growth where we started managing our assets much better and much more actively. Is anyone an Only Fools and Horses fan? Oh, the one Brit in the room. There's a really good joke in Only Fools and Horses where they're talking to a street sweeper, and he says, I've had this brush for 15 years. And they look at him and they go, no, you haven't. And they go, how many times have you changed the head? And he went, 7. And how many times have you changed the stick? 6. Well, it's not the same brush anymore. So most vending machines they're not new. They've got a chassis that then get refurbished. So with the Mark IV, we were looking at a way we can keep the chassis, but then refurbish it and take the business forward. We're in 9 trial countries, and I think most significantly in 2016, we'd really grown our first equity-run business, which was in Shell, where we owned 160 machines, had Costa Canada set up, and we're partnering them with a view to get into an awful lot more machines across Canada. As I mentioned, we had a further new op structure in terms of supporting our international business and international people. And most excitingly, I think we launched Grid. So where I'd always wanted to get to in Costa, I'd started with a UK role and moved into an international role. I wanted to do something internationally before we did it in the UK and then share best practice back into the UK. We're just launching Grid in the UK. We've already launched Grid internationally. So our international partners are getting more hassle from us than our UK partners. So I hope that gives you an overview, a feel for some of the exciting stuff that we've done in Costa over the last few years. I left with somewhat of a heavy heart, I think. I enjoyed my time at Costa. Let's hope that Walgreens and Boots can deliver the same sort of supply chain changes as well. And I think to reflect on the point I made right at the start, it'll be interesting if we can do as much revolution in an organization the size of Walgreens versus an organization the size of Costa. So thank you.
So how did you convince people to go on your journey for revolution?
I think first of all, there was a critical business need. The business was absolutely going to fall over if we didn't do something. So in one respect, that was easy. I was the only supply chain professional in the whole organization. Well, if Chris says that it's the right thing to do, it must be. I think was another good reason. And then having someone, again, Scott remained involved in the business and still is, so had that kind of entrepreneurial background and drove the business forward and thought, well, if it's the right thing to do, let's just get on and do it. And I think it's a really good example, actually, of where an entrepreneur has been swallowed up into a large organization, but then being able to keep some autonomy. He often referred to Lockheed Martin, that I can't remember, Skunk Works. They have a little division where they just hive everything off. You go do some crazy stuff. Costa Express is the Skunk Works of Costa and Whitbread, I think.
So now you're at Walgreens, Boots, and it's a bigger organization, right? How are you feeling about innovation and the ability to drive innovation in a larger company, or any insights about, revolution versus evolution?
I'm only 3 weeks in, so
okay, so we'll give you a test.
So I can come here, and it's been great actually to hear so much discussion where I've got no preconcept of how I'm going to apply this back in my own organization. From a supply chain point of view, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity where we're just bringing this group together. Walgreens only bought Boots 2-3 years ago, and they're just about finishing kind of some of the operational integration. They bought a pharmacy chain in Mexico and Chile about 2 years ago as well, where we're looking at how we can support and integrate that. And then Boots, the UK arm, had some legacy businesses in Thailand and Norway that we're looking at how we can integrate all that. So I think there's lots of positive opportunity. From a consumer point of view, and I can only really speak for Boots from my experience, they are at the cutting edge, actually, of really changing the way that healthcare and beauty can be delivered. Just one example, they've recently launched an app for their own product called Number 7, where you can test your skin complexion and it will recommend the right face cream or product for you to use as well. So they've really embraced technology, actually, and thought, how can I bring technology into a very personable retail experience?
So, Chris, you're about half my age. And when you think about, the differences in generation, what would you say to folks that, are the gray hairs in supply chain about embracing people that are pushing the revolution?
I think even if I'm half your age, I think I see people changing and technology moving on that even I have to try and keep up with. Like I force myself to use Instagram because otherwise I'm 22-year-olds are getting behind and running away. I think that Irfan said it yesterday, and there's a phrase in UK English that you're either on the bus or you should get off it. And I think this change is coming. It's going to happen no matter how much we kick and scream and stamp our feet. So just embrace it, come along for the journey. I think that I'll be lucky if I retire by 2060, so even 2070 maybe. So maybe we'll be here thinking about what the supply chain of 2070 looks like in 2050. But to start getting your head around that kind of concept of so far out is, I have no idea what 5 years' time looks like, to be honest. So it's quite a challenge to think what 2030 looks like. I think the one theme that I've picked up, and I don't know if it's a North American thing or a supply chain thing, is that we keep talking about talent and the way that things work. One of the reasons I left Costa, I'd been there for 4 years, and I thought that that was enough. People under 30, my own feelings and what I find is that don't want to work for a company for 10, 15 years. I don't see that anymore. Career paths tend to be 2 or 3 years on one thing and then go and move on to something else now. Certainly my experience in the UK. So I think a watch out would be, let's not make the work we're doing on career paths and succession planning too rigid. Let's embrace that someone might only come in and go for 2 years, and that might be 80% of your team that's coming through. Yeah, there needs to be some structure and some leadership and some stability, but that isn't going to come from your planners and your middle managers. I think that has to come from the leadership team, and you've got to embrace that those guys are going to turn through and churn pretty quickly.
I think that's great wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.